Welcome to the latest Digital Disability Film Review podcast. We're going to look at Run, CripTales, and Christmas Ever After. So, Run, Miro, this is mainly me and you talking about this. So, what did you think of Run?
I thought it was a very mediocre film. As thrillers go, it was watchable. I wasn't reaching to turn it off, but it was fairly conventional. You knew what was going to happen by the end of it. It got bizarre towards the end where it became so far fetched. In terms of disability issues, there was even how it started with this kind of list of impairments and diagnostic labels was a bit strange as a way to describe, and then you realize actually that it's describing all the impairments of the main character, but as if the audience had to know this in order to find some sort of connection or understanding with the main character. And then I thought it was interesting in the relationship between obviously the two characters, the predominant characters in the film, the mother and daughter, and of course the mother, who clearly has mental health conditions in the way that she believes, and interacts with her daughter on the basis of their false relationship. Of course, the mother is portrayed as menacing and a threat and deviant, and unstable, through the Hollywood formula. And of course, for the actual main character, the witch, she was, pretty. I haven't seen her in any other pieces of work before. That's the first time I've ever seen her do anything. In fact, I don't know if that's her first film. I thought she came across as fairly well, but again, I think it was let down by focusing on impairment. It was, and I felt there was some scenes that I was a little bit uncomfortable about, particularly when she's struggling, when she gets out of a wheelchair and she's crawling on the floor, and there's these long scenes of just watching her gasp for breath, and as she kind of drags herself around the house without her wheelchair, which I was a bit perplexed by.
Right. So in essence, it's about this homeschooled teenager who begins to suspect that her mother has a dark secret, which is the IMDb description of it. And I was fascinated by the description of the impairments at the beginning and the medical conditions. And it seemed to want to throw everything in there. So she couldn't just be paralyzed. She had to also have asthma. She also had to have all these rashes all over her body. And the quietest stairlift in the history of the world, which I thought was the most amazing thing. I must admit, I quite enjoyed it because it was ridiculous. I quite like films that are ridiculous, and there is I'm going to tell you the spoiler because it's been out a while, but the spoiler is that the mother has Munchausen syndrome, and that actually the child is not disabled at all and has been forced to live the life of a disabled since an infant, and all the rashes and that are the drugs that the mother is giving her to make her a wheelchair user and an asthmatic. And it is a really ridiculous plot. Sarah Paulson, who plays the mother, is getting a bit typecast as crazy woman. I would recommend it because it was interesting, and I did find it funny in a completely unintentional way. There's a bit where she tries to come downstairs and the mother has turned the stair lift off, so she finally gets on the stair lift and then throws herself off the stair lift, down the stairs, lands down the stairs, and then she can suddenly start moving her toes, which I think was supposed to be an indication that, whatever, because she hadn't had her drugs for a while or something. And I thought the young woman, who I think it is her first film, Kira Allen, I thought she was very good. I thought she carried her part off very well. She is a person with a real impairment, and that made it quite interesting. Obviously, it was completely unrealistic in what it made her do in the way that it was made. So there's a bit where she crawls out of the window, crawls along the roof, and does a little bit of science magic to make a window shatter. The bit of being on the roof was ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. But what ruined it for me was the end.
Yeah. I know what you guys. Well, I'll be interested in what
Well, firstly, there's a bit where the mother is scarred, And it turns out they'd edited out a scene that explained that her mother had been abused as a child or had been the victim of Munchausen syndrome. And this scar that you see in the shower, it was enough to imply it, but I would have quite liked that being a bit more explicit because, I'm an idiot. And I don't have a problem with over explanation, but I would have just liked to see more actors in it, actually. Just those two women and the postman was a bit odd. I think if you're a Stephen King fan, there was lots of Stephen King jokes in there. So, for example, there was a reference to Misery and The Town, where he sets a lot of his stuff. It's not a Stephen King story, and so I didn't mind it if you just saw it as almost a comedy set. So, but it had really odd moments. Like, for example, it was patently obvious that the young woman could get out of her chair and move across areas without it. So, when her mother locks her in a basement and chains her wheelchair to something so that she can't reach something, and then she just falls out of the wheelchair and crawls to it. It's kind of like it was just a little bit illogical because you'd seen the young woman go up and down stairs across roofs and everything. The mother would have known. Mira, what are you going to say?
Well, no, I was going to say, I thought there was a part at the end after her mother is incarcerated, and then she goes to visit her, and that whole bit where she gets out of her wheelchair and walks with a stick through the metal detector as a way to kind of prove that no longer had she got this kind of these impairment restrictions imposed upon her. She can now walk with the aid of a stick. But I just thought it was really bizarre. It was the way that it kind of this retribution had come from. Now her mum's incarcerated. There's then that part where she brings in the main character brings in when she visits the prison medication, which she then regurgitates to feed to her, which I assume she's feeding to her mum as a way to kind of punish her for what she's been doing to.
She's giving her the drugs that her mother gave her.
Yeah,
make her paralyzed.
So all that was I was really perplexed by that, particularly the scene when she deliberately gets out of her wheelchair to perform and walk through the metal detector as a way to.
I thought that was very interesting because I think that was special effects because I don't think she can walk.
Oh, okay.
And actually using special effects to put a person who can't walk on a body that does walk for that scene, I thought was fascinating, odd, and quietly surreal. And I didn't like the way they'd made her, that she ended up working with disabled people. She was fitting prostheses once she'd escaped her mother and was sort of cured and could whatever.
Yeah, she was really pleased that she'd been able to give a child legs.
That's it.
I think that was the phrase she used, wasn't it?
But again, it's so bad, it's funny. And if you could almost
funny for us,
tongue in cheek. Well, it's funny because it was so bad. I kept thinking they mean this. This is supposed to be funny. It isn't. It isn't kind of like bad in the sense of like just tapping into cliches. It did obviously, but I thought it was so bad that perhaps they meant it. And even like getting a disabled person who really couldn't walk, and then having to use special effects to put her head on the body of this person who walks through the thing, etc. It was just really bizarre. And I thought the fact that she was then doing it to her mother, which was that was the cliche, that psychological thing that you repeat the deeds of your parents. I thought that was a bit crass and equally illogical. To give her the drugs that would have kept the mother paralyzed in prison in the infirmary, she would have had to have visited her quite a lot. And the implication was that she didn't. And then she was going to stop visiting her. So then she wouldn't be paralyzed anymore. And it started to get a little bit confused on its kind of the daughter then taking revenge on her mother who had done terrible things to her. So it was all got a bit over the top in the end. But I would recommend it because it's an hour 30. It's quite snappy. Sarah Paulson is always good to watch as a nutcase. I think there's no other way to use the way she plays those kind of characters with mental health issues other than
I think sorry, I was going to say, it did throw up some interesting themes to reflect on, like the idea of using impairment as a form of control and trying to create those conditions where you then forcing somebody to be dependent upon you as a way to legitimize your role as the carer or as a mother. And also, you know, the of course, you know, this whole portrayal of a young disabled person, isolated, no friends, you know, lack of social control, and of course, for many young disabled people, that is the situation. And you know, so it was interesting to see those kind of themes thrown up, although they were used for the purpose of mystery and thriller.
And I just wanted the postman to survive. And I think and equally, there is another little twist within the story that that I won't tell you, but I would recommend it. So yeah, would you recommend it, Miro, as for a nice hour and a half of amusing?
Well, I'd watch it over Christmas Ever After.
Well, we'll get to that a bit later.
It sounds like a mashup of the Night Listener, Misery, and The Room, actually.
Yeah, and there's even a little bit of Rear Window in there, and particularly the Christopher Reeve version of that. There's a whole load of stuff in there, and so actually, if you've watched and enjoyed those kind of movies, it wasn't bad. You know, it tapped into all of those and delivered some in jokes and some amusing. If you're a disabled person throwing yourself off a stair lift to get down the stairs,
what's the other twist you won't tell us?
That she's not. You think it's her daughter, but actually it's
right, yeah.
Now you've made me ruin it for everybody, but actually it's not ruined because you pretty much guessed that straight off. But yeah, so she's not really her daughter, and she kidnapped her off someone else. So and there's a little mention at the end when she's visiting her that she's mixing with her original parents and her in-laws in a kind of more normalized kind of way. So, but I would check it out. I would recommend it. So because it was just ridiculous. Right, let's move on to CripTales. So there's 6 of these. Is there? Is there 6? Right. So let's have a little talk about the kind of. Oh, IMDb have only got the first 2 up, which is a bit of a shame. So that was no good to me. So this was it's a BBC and BBC America production, which was curated by Matt Fraser. I would recommend that people check out the Disability Arts Online interview between Colin Hambrook and Matt Fraser. Obviously, I'd recommend everybody subscribes to Disability Arts Online, as we all do, to keeping up to date. And mainly, the primary reason, obviously, is to read Alison's reviews of books and films, as I read your documentary review, disability and documentary review yesterday, so which I thought was very good. Anyway, but it's 6 short kind of monologues. They're monologues. The BBC had done monologues many years ago, and they've redone them. The Alan Bennett load. I think they did a load of feminist or women monologues, and this was the next one in the line of doing disabled people. What did one think of this, Alison?
I totally welcome the series. Overall, I loved it. Though I've just watched them again this morning, and I almost got to the point of ranking it, which is not what I want to, not really what I want to be doing. But I have to say that the 2 that I probably loved the most were Matt Fraser's, which I thought had just some brilliant lines, it was both entertaining in and of itself, but in so many ways it was so cleverly written by him to capture so many of the issues, not just around auditioning and disabled actors and how they're treated, but I personally have decided, as long as it's available, to use it as a recovery vehicle for me after I've had an interview and been turned down for a job, because it kind of, I just find it really healing to listen to it, even though it's partly quite angry. So that was one of my favourite 2. And the other one, which I thought was really outstanding, was Jackie Hagan's. again written by her and performed by her.
Which one was that?
That was I've forgotten the name. Oh, Paper Knickers.
Paper Knickers.
Yeah, and again, and perhaps even more so, I think what I loved about it most was I wanted to see this character again and again. In a way, she's nothing like her in a lot of ways, but I could almost see her becoming a regular I would look forward to on my TV screen, like, I don't know how to pronounce it actually, but Roisin Conaty, for example. It's just like, I wanted to know more about this woman's life, just completely. I just found it completely and utterly engaging. It was, I think, definitely in a non-dark sense, although a bit in a dark sense, the funniest. I think the writing was comedy gold. I thought it was just so funny, just little asides. I think that in some ways only people in the disabled people's community would get, but at the same time funny anyway. Just a totally captivating character, a really good story, which I think probably would echo with most people who have, particularly those who have got acquired impairments. Just a really good piece of art, even on your terms, Paul.
Even on my terms.
Even on your strict terms. A real piece of disability art, but also just there in the mainstream, sitting alongside the mainstream and saying this woman needs a series. I just absolutely loved that one. Which doesn't mean I didn't really value most of the rest. There's only one really that I didn't like. So
which one didn't you like?
That one was Real Deal, and unfortunately I am on one of those. I don't like being on the side, but I think despite the intentions, and I've read all the debate around it about it being a story of the Kafkaesque nature of going through the assessments process and the DWP. Even if that was its intention, I think it's a good intention. I don't think it hit its mark. Instead, how it hit me, particularly as somebody with a fluctuating impairment who often passes or is told that they're not really disabled, not as Jackie Hagan says, properly disabled. I found it really stigmatizing, and I've kind of heard all the counter arguments about that, but when I look through the dialogue, the monologue there, it does actually quite cleverly read as a dialogue, but her comments about, I think his name's Giles, White Vest Man, are all very classed. We have his predatory sexual behaviour, we have the way he dresses, his fat bottom, mucus on his fingers, the white vest, all of this. He is very definitely painted as a worker, as low working class scum, I think, and she's quite middle class. And that in itself is not necessarily a problem. It's just, I think that we become, even though she starts off being really quite nasty in announcing her goal, we become, the character kind of starts talking about her own virtue and how she's a real disabled person, as in the real deal. And this, this idea that there's real disabled people who deserve benefits, deserve attention, and lots of scroungers is unfortunately for me very, very much underlined in this. And yeah, so I really didn't like it at all. She's a very able actress, actor. I thought it was a shame, a missed opportunity.
So, well, let me talk about that bit in the sense that this is the one about a woman who's looking out of a window watching someone who, all that you've just described. And the controversy was John Pring seems to, in the Disability News Service, seems to have been instrumental in highlighting the problem that you've just said about it. And a lot of people have become very defensive of it. And there was a really good defense of it in Disability Arts Online, I think, that says that other view of, what it was doing. I think to me, particularly in relation to that episode, I thought Liz, it was one of the best things she's done as a performance. I think the problem with anything is intent and how it's received often have no relationship. So I think the intent may have been there, and both in the performance and in the writing and in the directing, but actually the reception of it will be exactly as you've said it was, Alison. And I think it will be used and abused to perpetuate those. And it pandered to a kind of right-wing agenda of the deserving and the undeserving. I think the class thing, again, I thought Liz was brilliant in it, and I thought she got the nuance on that. And it was about class, but again, you're talking about getting an audience to take all of those things to account, which I think by and large they either can't or won't, and I think it will be used in a really negative way. But again,
Can I say one really positive thing? And I did actually briefly chat to Matt about this afterwards. One briefly positive thing, and I think this is, and I think this is fundamental, is I'm really, really glad it was in that series, because when you think about it, I think all of them were really good, and the fact that there was one in there that actually made me quite angry and quite upset, I think, and obviously that's true for other people, means that actually we've got to that point where we've got a range of things, and we can now say this works for most people. This works for most people. Not there should be a list, but it's like now we've finally got that space, and we're testing that out, and we're getting to experiment. We're kind of a bit more aware of where things are taking us, and what the implications of that are, possibly for subgroups within that audience that you're talking about. So I think it's absolutely right that it should be in there, particularly as I now know what I don't want disabled actors to be doing.
Yeah, well, it's funny because on that, following that through, it's kind of like, so should actors and writers not write things that they think will be misinterpreted? And I would say absolutely not. They should write whatever they want and actually make whatever they want. And the more that there is, it matters less if it's something we don't like in some ideological position. I think it's important, this one, because there isn't that much product, but actually for the people in it and the people making it, they shouldn't give a second thought actually in the kind of their creative processes. And I think it extended Liz. It showed her as a really good actress. I think she got a lot of nuance on there, but equally both sides are right. It won't be interpreted how you think it's going to be interpreted. And even if you wrote it with that and you want it to be seen that way, it almost definitely won't be. But that shouldn't stop you doing it. So, but the Matt Fraser one I thought was very interesting. I think part of it was very good and enjoyable, but because I've seen a lot of Matt's shows over the last 20 years, it didn't have much in it that I hadn't seen before from seeing all of his shows. And he's done a lot of shows, and he'd refined it and distilled it, and I thought that was really good. It wasn't as enjoyable for me because I'd heard most of that before, and he so, but it was all that you said it was, and I thought that was really good. I think the other biggest disappointment to me was the Hamish one. That it was subtitled. It shouldn't have been subtitled. You should have had the option to do the subtitles like you do on any program. And I thought, I don't like that. That you're demonstrating, you're making an allowance for people when in fact I want people disabled to make stuff that makes no allowances. So for example, people saying, a film, it hasn't got signed. Well, then you make a film that doesn't have subtitles that's signed. So that exclusionary thing, and that's what will happen when you get that kind of pluralism of production. That doesn't matter. But the way the BBC did it was, I thought it undermined it slightly, because I think everybody would have turned on the subtitles anyway. I turn on subtitles for anything spoken from the Queen onwards. Not that I watch anything with the Queen, because I want to be able to see what the dialogue is, not miss any of it. And I thought putting in the frame, that really did disappoint me actually. And I was a little bit annoyed because it was it was a kind of like a signal of, oh, it's disability. You need this help to engage with
yeah.
that, and I didn't like that. I thought, but I thought they were all fairly strong. Again, I thought they often had to explain the situation that was in, and again, for example, the abortion legislation and the wheelchair legislation as well. Again, the thing about the Hamish one that I thought it almost implied that you get a really good electric wheelchair on the NHS now, which of course is bollocks. That's not true. Uh, you're not automatically entitled to an electric wheelchair, even if you need one. So, and often you have to go to begging, and companies will do fun runs and all that kind of shit for you. So it sort of gave an implication, oh, it's all better now, and of course that's bollocks. What was the other one? But otherwise,
But
Miro.
the shed was. I have to say about the shed. It's as I've kind of done research and looking at demographics of disabled actors and things in the mainstream. It was so good to see a black female on a black disabled female on television, because it's one of those things we kind of know that they're not there, but we don't actually realise just how much they're not there. So for that alone, I liked it, although I didn't enjoy it as much as the others. I found it a little bit hard to follow.
I thought the shed was the weakest of all of them, actually. Written wise, I thought the whole narrative was a tad weak. I thought, again, coming back to the Hamish one, I didn't like the set. I think, why not do this in a real woods? Everybody else had a kind of fairly naturalistic, realistic kind of setting, except Matt in that one. But again, you didn't need that much. But I thought it was a shame that the Hamish one again was forced into this kind of theatrical set of the woods. And again, I didn't like that. I thought that showed a slight disrespect for the narrative and the individuals. But Miro.
Well, on the whole, I enjoyed them, and I think it picked up on so many different themes, ranging from kind of performance of impairment that we are either we are forced to do, or we become aware of, and then we internalize our thoughts on that, all the way through to issues of welfare. And I thought the welfare aspects around eugenics in the Thunderbox one, also the relationship with practitioners that were picked up in Paper Knickers, and the dialogue that one has with the practitioners, and the power that is held by medical personnel. I thought that was really really intriguing as well. And the shed, I get the problems with the shed. I think it was refreshing to see an issue that was highlighted, which was quite nuanced in the style of the relationship with personal assistant support, and how that can cross lines of jealousy. I don't know what jealousy. Yeah, jealousy and kind of control and power, not through kind of stereotypical ways of just trying to exert control over an individual, but question marks over affection and love and authority, all being kind of entangled together. I thought that was quite good. I wasn't happy with the ending for the shed. I thought that was quite it was quite a dull and stereotypical ending, I thought, which undermined the program.
I think it almost tried to do too much. It was too ambitious.
But
I agree with all you said.
And I think I think that was my issue with Real Deal as well. I think I think it was trying to do too much, and I think it was. And the problem is, again, for those who are going to sit and watch it for 15 minutes and then kind of move on, they probably will drill down into thinking about the broader media narrative of scrounges and surveillance and scrutiny, and how we're all told now to police our neighbors. Even in the context of the pandemic, we're told to police our neighbors, report people, and so on. So I think it comes at a problematic time, as well as possibly trying to do too much. Because I think there are some real gems, and even in the Real Deal, that issue of performativity in accessing welfare, social security, the issues around how there's a focus on medicalization rather than the broader barriers that people face. I suppose one thing to say on the Real Deal, though, is that there are, and I don't think it was trying to achieve this in the program, but it did make me reflect on this other point, which is even within our disabled people's community, I've seen how disabled people will turn on each other and challenge each other. And I think that comes from the an onslaught of austerity policy and indeed neoliberalism, how we're all told to individualize our own circumstances and kind of challenge each other when we think that we're facing barriers and problems. And I think I wish that would have been explored a little bit more. This idea of challenging the neighbor and questioning other people in our community. I would like to have seen that explored further and used as a way to actually raise questions about why is it that we are.
And to
why is
resist
it?
it.
Sorry, say again.
And to resist it.
To resist it, exactly. Yeah, to raise it as a question of why do we feel that it's appropriate to speculate about our neighbors, to question, to police, to then create action around that. And I think that was what really stung for me with the Real Deal. Setting aside, obviously, it was a great performance by.
But equally, I think in the Guardian today, or as one of the papers, that actually we have become a nation of snitches, particularly in relation to lockdown and all of those kind of things. But just generally, we have become a nation of snitches. And actually, I thought it was really good to explore that. And I think you could almost have added that element of resistance by just not pressing the button at the end. Actually, that could have given it a whole different spin.
Yeah,
one line and just not pressing that button
to reinforce collective disablement. It could have.
But then equally
completely gone there.
Yeah, but then equally, the reality is we are now in a world where 9 out of 10 people press the button, and showing that has its power as well to some extent. So it's both. And again, it's always a problematic when it's both. Both sides are right. Both sides have the right, and it's both. But what about the other ones, Miro?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've seen Matt Fraser kind of explore those examples, and I was that was really captivating. It was a really captivating performance, for me. And again, I like the way that it crossed over issues of accessing opportunities that we are of course dependent, particularly upon people who are in privileged positions who either don't care or are not familiar with access requirements and the importance of giving people opportunities. And then towards the end of his monologue, when he then starts to reflect on how, even from an early age, the way that he was monitored and interviewed as a way to determine the level of compensation that he should be paid. I thought that was really fascinating. And of course, if you translate that to any part of life, even in contemporary society, in the way that you go in, you have a 10-15 minute interview with somebody who then just ticks and determines the level of payment you'll get as a way of so-called support. So I think it really engaged with contemporary social problems facing disabled people, and I think that was the strongest for me. How even in these 6 stories you're covering issues of sexuality, you're covering intersectional aspects of our identity as disabled people, ranging from from sexuality all the way through to our class issues, and then of course these other broader policy areas of eugenics and accessing welfare and the role of choice and control. And go back to the shed, that idea of how for so long as disabled people's community we've demanded choice and control, but yet we haven't really had the opportunity to reflect on how that can also be problematic in the way that we are then left to take responsibility for our support, and how that can also then create problems and encounters within the microcosm of the relationship between the PAUs and the PA as well.
And equally, I think it's interesting how, a lot of people saying, Matt Fraser is an overnight star, but 30 years of hard work to be an overnight star is always quite an amusing thing, and again, I thought, what did one think of Ruth Madeley in the Thunderbox as an actress? I thought she was very good. I thought she captured a lot of the emotion.
I thought it was an outstanding performance. I thought it was an outstanding performance. I loved it. Yeah.
I thought that was
and really glad that the idea of parenthood and eugenics and the experience of women within that, which I'm always told is quite an unfashionable topic to look at as an academic, that we've done that kind of thing. It was, yeah, she's just such a good actress. Can I go back to Matt Fraser, to what you said? I can see what you mean about having seen lots of Matt's performances, but I agree generally with Miro. And I think one thing, when I was listening again to what he was talking about, I think it was kind of almost like a phenomenological performance, which really kind of focused so well on intersubjectivities between disabled and non-disabled people in a way that I haven't actually seen him do before. Mind you, I haven't seen anything that he's done in the past few years, but
I agree. I agree with you.
Rarely seen that kind of thing, and again, there was an element of that in her performance in Thunderbox.
Yeah, well, I think Matt distilled it to perfection in order to deliver a performance that was quite exceptional. And I think he got all of the elements in there with the kind of, and like you say, even in the way I describe what disability art is in various articles, particularly the number one article we were talking about earlier, but we won't mention that. I thought it did capture that very well. But I think even The Real Deal did that to some extent. And I just thought it showed the talent out there and the writing. And
Absolutely.
do you think this is a seminal moment that will change anything though? I see that Matt, into conversation with Colin Hambrook, for example, they're both saying this is the kind of I forgot what the phrase is, that moment where everything changes. They're suddenly going to start doing disability lots and differently and all that kind of stuff. And do you think that that's going to be the case, Miro?
I think it will require more opportunities now for disabled people to have these chances of controlling the written dialogue, the direction and the acting as well. On its own, I'm not convinced it will be a seminal moment, but if there's an opportunity where more broadcasters will give space, power and resources over to disabled people to control all aspects of filmmaking and delivery of film and documentary, then perhaps we can look back to say, oh, this was a way of seeing how we kind of moved in that direction. But the worry is that this can become easily lost within a kind of plethora of other representations of disability. If we think about the films that we're talking about in all our podcasts, this could quite easily become lost in that, and many audiences won't see it. So I hope it becomes a legacy in a sense where it creates a more emphasis on disabled people having opportunities within filmmaking.
Well, I'll say I don't think it will make any difference in particular. I think you have the advantage of youth, Miro, but I remember probably before you were born, we did this. The arrival of Channel 4. Channel 4 did. What did Channel 4 start in 82? When were you born, Miro? Tell us.
89.
89. Oh, 82. Channel 4 started. They did the most incredible programs on disability with disabled people, by disabled people, and then it slowly faded away and died. I think that's what's going to happen this time. I think the way media works is it picks a group to exploit, to give it some originality every few years, almost like a parasite. And then it moves on to another group, a bit like often arts funding. When you're in for 5 years, and then that group are in for 5 years, and then that group are in 5. And, we come back to that. And I think it's going to be a real tragedy if it isn't that moment. But actually, I'm old enough to have seen it before, once, if not twice. And then we just revert back, and Matt, the irony is Matt's been there all the way along it, actually. Even something like Freak Fucking Basics, which was a documentary, I think in the mid-90s, which was really, really good. So I don't share the hope of everyone else. I get the PR of boosting it and whatever, and they will get more jobs. Matt's going to get more jobs, Liz is going to get more jobs, and they will do those things. But actually, disabled people have always been getting those jobs in these periods, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, actors in Brookside and all that kind of stuff, dramas about them, films about them. But actually it fades away and it comes up again. It fades away and comes up again. And I can't see, in an era that we are in, which is probably the most dangerous era for disabled people in the last 30 years, it's not going to change that, and that danger is going to increase. And actually, a gloss of engagement, because again, you've got to remember, Channel 4, when I'm talking about the great stuff on Channel 4, was under Thatcher. So then you got Blair and it all disappeared because it's kind of like you didn't need to do it anymore. And I think, once this lot have gone, say 6, 7, 8 years time, I really don't, I can't, I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, but my experience tells me this isn't going to be that moment. Alison.
I agree. I think basically we know who the gatekeepers are, and there's very few of us amongst them. People don't give their power away without a fight, do they? It's kind of those old cliches. They'll give us bits and then say we've done that and move on. But we will, I imagine, keep fighting. Yeah. So nothing more to add really to that. Yeah. I hope we're all wrong, but I doubt it.
And on that note, I would add that if you really did enjoy the Matt Fraser one, as we all did, he is in a new game, a runner game about thalidomide, the drug, created by Simon McEwen, called Seal Boy and Friends, which if you go to Google Play, you can download it, where it's a runner game with Matt and someone else whose name escapes me, a young woman who has thalidomide. And they run through things and you get to different places and you learn about the history of thalidomide and the Nazis' role in it and all those kind of things. So check that out. I think it's £1, which goes to a good cause, to do some more work, whatever, around disability in games. But Matt's the star of that runner game. So check that out, Seal Boy and Friends, on Android only, on Play Store. So now we come to the truly exciting movie, which we have all seen in its utter delight and glory, which is Christmas Ever After. So as you're the one who's seen it the most recent, Alison, i.e. this morning, in the bleak midwinter, long after Christmas, when that joy and love and spirit of all Christmas stuff has gone, what did you think?
Was it there? I actually, you kind of recommended it to me beforehand, so I went in quite positive, and I have to say
that was irony. That was irony.
All right, okay, I didn't realise that. I took it as you said it. So anyway, let me first premise this by, I really don't like Christmas films. Kind of almost at all. I even don't like the one that everybody says is great. You know which one that is. And I actually watched Happiest Season a few weeks ago, and I thought that was going to be different. That was. Did you watch Happiest Season?
No.
That was a gay romance, and it was a bit like being great actors, a bit like being smashed over the head with a message. Really sad, because like I said, I don't often watch them, apart from Die Hard. So I haven't seen all of them, but that's the kind of Christmas film I would want. So this film obviously was in the romance genre, like romance Christmas genre, like Happiest Season. And I actually, given that I don't like the genre and it was just so predictable, I actually thought it wasn't as bad as I expected. and that's partly because she's I've forgotten her name. Sorry, Ali. What's her name?
Ali Stroker.
Yeah. She's a really good actress. The camera clearly loves her. I'm not sure quite what that means, but I'm sure you know what I mean. She's very easy to look at.
Vivacious.
Pardon?
Vivacious.
Yeah, she had a real presence. Very, very, very watchable. A bit of a rubbish story. But I have to say the disability parts of it, the impairment parts of it, I thought were handled really well. And I kept forgetting that this was the film that actually was featuring a disabled actress. So on that, I'm not that that's always like, oh, that makes it a good film. But I just thought, yeah, that part of it, I had very few complaints, but I might have missed something. But so basically, Mills and Boone, thumbs down. Impairment portrayals, and the disabled actress, thumbs up, really.
Well, I'll start by saying I thought it was dreadful, but it is within its genre a good example, and so that's a difficult thing to say. For example, I don't watch. It's a Lifetime movie, which is a bit like Hallmark movies and that kind of stuff. It's not my thing, and I didn't expect to like it, and I didn't particularly, but I think it is quite generic, to use a word. I don't think there's anything particularly special. And they are built upon the premise that you pretend there isn't a single problem in the world. So they erase issues of race, gender, and in this case, disability, age in particular. Everything is just nice and lovely. And everybody treats everybody as if the real world doesn't exist. Which, if you have any knowledge of the real world, you're sitting there thinking, fucking hell, this is shit. But they're all like that. So it's almost like unfair to criticize it. I think that's a missed opportunity in such a genre to not be able to get one or two little things in. For example, when she pulls up in the car and there's 15 steps up to the main entrance and then she's in the building. It's kind of like, just give us one little hint that the world isn't perfect. It was utterly bizarre. So having seen Happiest Season as well, which I think is quite interesting, I didn't mind Happiest Season that much because the thing I did like about Happiest Season was Dan Levy's character in it at the end, sort of, because I often say that people find the truth their own way and in different ways. Obviously, some people never find it. And I thought I quite like that about Dan Levy's character, in that you've got to not let them off, but understand where people have come from.
I liked his character.
Yeah, where people have come from in their bias, their ignorance, and their discrimination. And actually, with support, they can get on that right road. But actually, it's not all going to be the way you did it. And, by doing, revolution and this. And I thought Dan Levy saved Happiest Season, but only just. And this would have benefited from something like that enormously, just to give it a little bit of life.
I think you could have got the message of that film over in a TikTok
video. Done by Dan Levy, obviously.
Or a GIF.
As long as it was a very short GIF. Miro, Happiest Christmas Ever After.
Well, I watched it. It was a gateway to my Christmas. It was the first day off work, and the best thing about it was the snacks that I was eating while I was watching it. I couldn't. I didn't. I mean, it was one of those films that you could let just wash over you, and you felt, it was all pleasant. But as soon as you apply the disability studies lens to it, it all collapses, which is often the case with most films, really, to be honest.
I think as soon as you applied your eyes to it, they're just boring. That's the thing; they're just boring.
Yeah, but there's something about it that makes you feel a little bit. Well, for me anyway, I felt again. For the hour and a half, you forget about every injustice going on in the world, and you think the world's a perfect place where we all eat hot gingerbread men, and we all find the love of our life. There was a twist I didn't see coming, so I don't know what that says about me. I didn't realize that obviously his ex-wife, his previous wife was
his dead wife. Come on,
his dead wife. Yeah, I forgot. I couldn't remember if she was dead or she was ex-wife, and I thought I'll go with the ex.
He didn't match up the 3 years.
I
then.
didn't match up the 3 years. No. So what does that say about me?
I think he might have fallen asleep for a bit.
Yeah, I think that's when I became interested in my snacks. We're just looking at them instead. So, but no, I'm happy. I'm happy that I don't have to watch another Christmas movie until next Christmas.
It made me feel that too. You're right.
I love the idea that you called it a twist. You know, there is no such thing as a twist in these movies. I thought it's not my kind of thing. I don't like, none of us obviously like Christmas movies. You like Christmas movies, really, Miro. I know you do. You're a sentimentalist at heart. So, but no, it was just bizarre. Again, I would recommend people watch it because it's probably one of the few of that genre, of that type, with a disabled character in it, who is really disabled. She's won an Emmy for being in Oklahoma on Broadway or something like that.
They didn't show a body. That bugged me actually, because we saw his chest laid out on the sofa, and then then it switched to her body on the bed. She'd lifted herself out of a wheelchair, but she was fully clothed.
Well,
I didn't really want to see a body, but it's like, why don't we juxtapose a kind of rugged-looking man with this woman who's flumped herself on the bed?
But she was overclothed. She was overclothed. She seemed to have more clothes on than you could have ever dreamt of wearing in a really hot room.
But also, something that I raised, and I think, Paul, you said it might have been because of coronavirus, but I noticed as well, whenever there was a kiss with her, the camera had to like cut away, or it was obscure because the camera angle was filmed from the back of her head.
You're right. I was actually getting nervous. I'm going, oh God, they're going in for the kiss. How's the cameraman going to handle this?
But I think Paul said you think it might be because of coronavirus.
Yeah, well, to be fair, all the women I've ever kissed always look away when I'm doing it, so that's probably fair enough. But I think it was made under social distancing and all of that kind of thing, and I think perhaps that they didn't actually kiss, because they make them all in the summer. The summer before Christmas. In fact, it's having watched it, there was a brilliant Simpsons episode in the last few weeks about them coming to Springfield to make a Christmas movie for this kind of channel, actually, which was a really nice episode, which add a whole load of extra depth, having watched this Christmas Ever After, which was just really bizarre. But so have we got anything else to say, or is that it?
I think it probably lacked somebody getting worryingly ill and then recovering. I think they could have thrown that in the mix, really.
Yeah, but disease would imply that there's a real world.
Well, of course, you also had it was the hotel manager who acquired an injury to bring the main characters closer together, didn't he?
Yeah, sprained his ankle.
I thought race in it was quite interesting because, again, it seemed quite tokenistic. And again, let's pretend that the world is absolutely fair. As you know, the world, particularly America, is disintegrating into a kind of race hate war. That actually this thing with the because she's a writer in it, her agent and the town council woman, and it was like, oh.
That reminds me, the thing I hated about it the most, actually, apart from the clunky dialogue at the beginning, which is awful, was on 3 different occasions, they actually named it. Nepotism played a huge part, and I've got just such soapbox about nepotism. Nepotism, I've got a big soapbox about it anyway. I think of very little else sometimes, but 3 times it was brought up, and it was treated not just as a joke, but which it was treated as a joke, but also kind of as it's beginning to be almost seen as a positive trait. Is we do this, we do, and so the one most disturbing thing about the film for me was the fact that nepotism is a lovely thing that happens in happy people's lives, which of course it is. But it's still, all the rest, the discontents now. So it's now become a virtue, nepotism.
So basically, you're equating it there with Italian realism, that actually representing the reality of nepotism as a good thing for those who engage in it in their lovely lives. Well, on that note, again, I'd recommend everybody sees everything we've said, even if we don't like it, because it's just funny. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Miro. And we look forward to the next one, which I'll tweet this and everybody can see it, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do for the next time. There's some good stuff coming up. So thank you both.
Cheers.
Thank you.